Divine timing is a principle that is often misunderstood, yet it is one of the most profound truths that can shape our lives and our faith. In this world, we live by schedules. We wake up at a certain time, we go to work at a designated hour, and we expect events in our lives to happen according to a predetermined timetable. But God's timing is not like that. His ways are not our ways, and His thoughts are not our thoughts. When it comes to divine timing, it often feels like things are taking longer than we expect, or even that they may never come to pass. Yet, this delay is not denial. It is simply a season where God is positioning us for the fullness of His plan. Think about the many great biblical figures whose lives exemplify the concept of divine timing. Take Joseph, for example. He was given a dream as a young man. This dream promised him greatness, that his family would one day bow to him. Joseph had this vision of the future, but it didn't come to pass the way he expected it to. Instead of walking directly into his destiny, he was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. For years it seemed like God had forgotten him. It felt like his dream was slipping further away, but God's timing was at work. Every setback Joseph experienced was part of the process, preparing him for the position of power he would eventually hold. Joseph's moment came when it was time for it to come, and when it did, no one could deny the hand of God in his life. God's timing was perfect. What appeared to be a series of misfortunes was actually God's plan unfolding, preparing Joseph for a moment of victory that he couldn't have reached any other way. We see this time and time again in the Bible. Moses, for example, was called to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt, but before he could walk into his purpose, he had to go through years of preparation in the wilderness. Moses spent 40 years learning humility, leadership, and dependence on God. God didn't rush him. Even when Moses doubted his own ability, God's timing was still at work, preparing him for the incredible task of freeing millions of people. If Moses had been called any sooner, he might not have had the character, strength, or trust in God necessary to carry out such a monumental task. It was during his years of preparation that God was refining Moses, and when the time was right, Moses led the people out of Egypt. Divine timing is a reminder that God sees the bigger picture, the full span of your life, while we only see a small piece. There are things that are being worked out behind the scenes that you don't even know about yet. God is orchestrating events in your life, placing the right people in your path, closing doors that you thought were your only option, and opening new ones that are tailor-made for your future. Everything that you've been through, every high and every low, has been part of the grand design of God's plan for you. It's easy to get discouraged when we feel like things aren't happening quickly enough. We may look at others around us and feel like we're falling behind or missing out. We may wonder why certain dreams haven't materialized yet, or why we haven't seen the breakthroughs we've been praying for. But the truth is that God is never late. He's never early. He's always on time, and His timing is perfect for your life. You might be in a season right now where you feel like you're in the waiting room, but don't lose hope. Waiting is not wasting. It's a time of preparation. God is getting you ready for something far greater than you can imagine, but first He has to do the work inside you. In the waiting, there's growth. In the waiting, there's maturity. In the waiting, there's a deepening of your faith. You're learning to trust when you don't see the way forward. You're learning to believe even when you can't feel it or understand it. It's in the waiting that God strengthens your character, molds your perseverance, and teaches you the importance of patience. When the moment comes, when your time arrives, you'll be ready because God has already done the work in you. Remember, God does not operate by our human clock. He is not bound by our deadlines or schedules. He is eternal, and His understanding of time is perfect. What may seem like a delay to us is simply God's perfect timing unfolding. Just because you haven't seen the result yet doesn't mean God isn't working. He's laying the groundwork, aligning people, opening doors, and placing you in the right position at the right moment. And when that time comes, you won't have to push it, force it, or manipulate it. You will simply walk into it with ease, because when God moves, he moves in such a way that no one can stop it, and no one can deny his hand in it. Your dream will unfold just as God intended, and it will happen in a way that is far greater than anything you could have planned for yourself. So, if you're in a season of waiting right now, don't be discouraged. Don't let your faith waver. Trust in the divine timing of God. He's never early and he's never late. He's always right on time. Your breakthrough is coming. Your moment of elevation is on the way. Your divine appointment is just around the corner. God is working behind the scenes, and he is preparing you for something incredible. Trust his timing, for it is the perfect timing for your life. Success is one of the most challenging aspects of our faith journey. It's easy to trust when things are going well, when the blessings are flowing, and when everything is lining up just as we imagined it would. But the true test of faith comes when we face the unexpected, when the road is rough, and when the outcome seems uncertain. In those moments, the process can seem like it's dragging on endlessly. We may even begin to question whether God is truly working in our lives at all. But this is precisely when the power of trust becomes so critical. The process isn't always glamorous. In fact, it's often messy. It can be filled with setbacks, delays, and detours that leave us feeling frustrated and disillusioned. We may have a clear vision of what we want, but the path to getting there seems winding and unpredictable. It's easy to become impatient, to try to rush things, or to take shortcuts in an effort to speed things up. But God doesn't work that way. He doesn't take shortcuts, and he doesn't rush the process. He's more concerned with who you are becoming through the journey than with the destination itself. When we talk about trusting the process, it's about more than just waiting passively for things to happen. It's about having the faith to know that every single step you take is purposeful, even if it doesn't make sense in the moment. It's understanding that God is not just interested in getting you to your destination. He's also concerned with shaping your character along the way. Every challenge, every obstacle, every moment of uncertainty is part of the refining process. It's during these moments that we learn to lean on God more, to trust in his wisdom, and to surrender our own understanding. The process is never wasted. It's always producing something in us that will be vital for the next season of our lives. Look at the lives of some of the greatest figures in Scripture. David, the young shepherd boy who would one day become king, had to go through years of training before he could step into the role God had destined for him. He was anointed as king when he was still a teenager, but he didn't immediately sit on the throne. Instead, he spent years running from King Saul, hiding in caves and enduring hardship. It was in those years of running and hiding that David learned the lessons he would need to lead Israel effectively. It wasn't the title of king that prepared David. It was the process of being shaped by adversity. Had David been thrust into leadership too soon, he would not have had the strength, wisdom, or humility necessary to lead a nation. The process, painful as it was the key to his future success. We can also look at the example of Jesus Christ. He was the Son of God, the Messiah, and he could have come to earth in an instant to fulfill his purpose. But he didn't. He entered the world as a baby, and his life was filled with the same human struggles we face. He experienced hunger, pain, betrayal, and rejection. He endured the process of growing up in a family, learning the scriptures, and working as a carpenter before stepping into his public ministry. Even as he began his ministry, he was tested in the wilderness by the enemy. Jesus could have bypassed the process of suffering, but he chose to walk through it because he knew it was essential for fulfilling his purpose and for understanding our struggles. His trust in the process, his willingness to endure suffering, humiliation, and death, was the very thing that brought salvation to the world. When we find ourselves in difficult seasons, it's important to remember that God is not absent. He's not sitting back, distant from our pain. He is deeply involved in the process, and He is using every situation to form us more into the image of Christ. It's easy to think that God has abandoned us when things aren't going the way we want them to. But the truth is that God is often doing His most profound work in the quiet, unseen moments of our lives. In the waiting, in the struggle, and in the difficulty, God is refining us. In those times, we must choose to trust. Trust that the process is leading us somewhere. Trust that God is in control. Trust that even when we don't understand why things are happening the way they are, He has a purpose. There will be moments when it feels like nothing is happening. We may feel stuck, like we're walking in circles. But it is in these moments that we must hold onto the truth that God is always working, even when we can't see the results yet. The seed has been planted, and though it may not sprout immediately, the process is taking place beneath the surface. Trusting the process also involves surrendering our own timelines. We live in a world that is obsessed with instant gratification. We want things now, not later. We want solutions immediately, without delay. But God's ways are not our ways. He is not bound by time. The waiting periods, the seasons of seeming inactivity, are often the most important parts of the journey. They teach us patience, endurance, and dependence on God. Trusting the process means allowing God to work at His pace, not ours. The key to trusting the process is to understand that God's process is always for our good. Even when it hurts, even when it's uncomfortable, God is working for our benefit. He's not punishing us, He's preparing us. Trusting the process means believing that what God is doing in us is far more important than what's happening to us. When we begin to trust that God is working for our good, we can find peace in the midst of uncertainty. We can rest in the knowledge that He who began a good work in us will complete it. So, whatever process you're in right now, don't give up. Don't lose heart. Trust the process. Know that God is shaping you, molding you, and preparing you for something far greater than you can see. His plan is perfect, and His timing is flawless. Your breakthrough, your blessing, your purpose, it's all on the way. But first, you must trust the process that is bringing you into it. Breaking barriers is a concept that can be both exciting and daunting. It's the idea that there are obstacles in our lives, some visible and some hidden, that stand between us and the full life God has planned for us. These barriers could be anything from fear and doubt to generational patterns or even personal limitations that we believe define us. The truth is, many of the barriers we face are not insurmountable. They simply need to be confronted and overcome through the power of faith. God has the power to break down every wall, tear through every barrier, and open up a path where there seems to be no way. One of the most important things we must realize is that the barriers we face are often not as strong as they appear. In fact, many times the barriers in our lives are self-imposed. We tell ourselves that we can't do something because of past mistakes or failures, or because of fears we've held on to for far too long. We let these barriers define us, believing that our limitations are permanent. But God does not see us the way we see ourselves. He doesn't define us by our past, our mistakes, or the labels that have been placed on us. He sees us as more than conquerors, capable of breaking through every limitation that stands in our way. Let's take a moment to look at the power of faith in breaking down barriers. In the Bible, we see story after story of people who faced seemingly insurmountable obstacles, but by their faith in God, those obstacles were overcome. Think about the story of the Israelites standing at the walls of Jericho. These walls were massive, fortified, and seemingly impenetrable. The Israelites had no weapons, no way to break through, and no plan to overcome such a formidable barrier. Yet God gave them a strategy. March around the walls once a day for 6 days, and on the 7th day, march around 7 times and shout. The people did as God commanded, and on the seventh day, when they shouted, the walls of Jericho fell down flat. What was once a barrier to their progress became the doorway to their victory. This story is a powerful reminder that when God is on our side, no wall is too high, no obstacle too strong. There's also the story of the woman with the issue of blood. For 12 years, she had suffered with a condition that caused her to be an outcast in society. She was rejected, judged, and marginalized because of her illness. But in the midst of her suffering, she didn't accept the barrier of her condition as permanent. She pressed through the crowd, fought past her fear and shame, and touched the hem of Jesus' garment. Her faith in God's ability to heal her was the key to breaking the barrier that had confined her for so long. Jesus responded to her faith by saying, "Daughter, your faith has healed you." The barrier of illness, rejection, and shame was broken by her trust in God's power to overcome. When we're facing barriers, it's easy to become overwhelmed. It's easy to look at the obstacles in our lives and think, this is too much. There's no way I can overcome this. But when we realize that our barriers are not stronger than God's power, we begin to approach them differently. We can look at a barrier and say, this wall might be big, but I serve a God who is bigger. Every barrier in our lives can be broken down when we trust in God's power to work in us and through us. We are not called to shrink back in fear, but to push forward in faith, knowing that God is with us, breaking down the walls that stand in our way. Sometimes the barriers we face are internal rather than external. We have mindsets and beliefs that limit our potential. We may struggle with feelings of inadequacy or fear of failure that keep us from stepping out into the life God has called us to live. These mental barriers can be just as powerful, if not more so, than the external ones. But just as God can break down physical walls, He can break down the walls in our minds and hearts. The key to overcoming these mental barriers is renewing our minds. The Bible tells us to be transformed by the renewing of your mind, Romans 12:2. When we allow God's truth to penetrate our hearts and minds, the mental barriers that have kept us bound begin to crumble. Consider the Apostle Paul, who was once known as Saul, a man who persecuted Christians. His life was filled with hatred, fear, and a mindset that he could never change. But when he encountered Jesus on the road to Damascus, everything changed. Paul's mind was transformed, and the barriers of guilt, shame, and hatred that once controlled him were broken. He became one of the greatest apostles, spreading the message of Christ to the Gentiles. His story is a testament to the fact that no matter how deep the mental and emotional barriers are, God can break them down and create a new heart and mind within us. There are also the generational barriers that we often face. Many of us inherit mindsets, behaviors, or circumstances that are handed down from our ancestors. We may have grown up in environments where fear, poverty, addiction, or dysfunction seem to be a part of the family legacy. But God does not intend for us to carry on these generational curses. He wants to break the chains that have been passed down from one generation to the next. Through faith in Christ, we can break free from these patterns and start a new legacy. We are not bound by the limitations of our past. God offers us freedom, and when we accept His power to break these generational barriers, we can step into the fullness of the life He has for us. When we face barriers, we must remember that we are not alone. God is with us, and His power is greater than any barrier we face. Through faith, we can break through every wall, every obstacle, and every limitation. The key is to keep moving forward, trusting that God is working in and through us. Our obstacles are not permanent, they are temporary. We are more than conquerors through Christ, and we have the power to break every barrier that stands in our way. No matter how big the challenge, with God on our side, we will always come out victorious. Transformation is one of the most powerful processes in the spiritual journey. It's the process by which God takes us from where we are to where He wants us to be. This journey of transformation is not simply about changing external circumstances, but about a profound inner change that affects our entire being, our heart, mind, spirit, and even our body. When God transforms us, He doesn't just make superficial changes. He makes deep, lasting alterations to who we are at the core. And this transformation is essential for stepping into the fullness of the life He has designed for us. Without it, we would never be able to carry the weight of the blessings and purpose He has planned. The process of transformation often begins with a challenge, an obstacle, or a situation that shakes us out of our comfort zone. God knows that we cannot be transformed unless we are willing to confront the parts of ourselves that need to change. These challenges serve as the catalyst for growth, and they push us into places of discomfort that ultimately result in spiritual, emotional, and even physical growth. In the midst of these challenges, it is easy to feel like we are being punished or forsaken. But the truth is that God is at work in us, refining us, and preparing us for something greater. One of the most powerful examples of transformation in the Bible is the life of Saul, who later became the Apostle Paul. Saul was a man who was completely lost, filled with hatred, pride, and a rigid belief system that led him to persecute Christians. He was on the road to Damascus, intending to arrest Christians, when he encountered Jesus in a blinding light. This encounter completely transformed Saul's life. He went from being a murderer of Christians to one of the greatest apostles, spreading the message of Christ throughout the world. His transformation was not immediate or easy, but it was complete. He had to let go of everything he once believed and be remade from the inside out. God didn't just change his actions, He changed his heart, his mind, and his purpose. Saul's transformation into Paul is a powerful reminder that no one is beyond God's ability to transform. Another key aspect of transformation is the renewal of the mind. The Apostle Paul writes in Romans 12:2, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Transformation begins in the mind because the way we think directly influences the way we live. If we hold onto old mindsets, old fears, and old ways of thinking, we will continue to live in the past and miss the opportunities for growth and new experiences that God has for us. But when we allow God to renew our minds, we begin to see ourselves, our circumstances, and the world around us in a new light. We begin to see through God's eyes instead of the limited perspective we once had. A renewed mind leads to a transformed life, one that is aligned with God's will and filled with purpose. Transformation also requires surrender. It's easy to want to change, but it's much harder to give up control and allow God to do the work in us. We often resist transformation because it involves letting go of things that are familiar, comfortable, and sometimes even safe. We may need to give up old habits, relationships, or ways of thinking that are holding us back. But true transformation cannot occur without surrender. We have to be willing to give God full access to every area of our lives, even the places we would rather keep hidden. God is not interested in a partial transformation. He wants to change us completely from the inside out. Consider the story of the potter and the clay in the book of Jeremiah. God tells the prophet Jeremiah to go to the potter's house and observe the process of the potter shaping the clay. As the potter works, the clay may not always look perfect, and at times it may need to be reshaped or reworked. But the potter is always in control, and the clay is always in submission to the potter's hands. This image illustrates our relationship with God in the process of transformation. God is the potter, and we are the clay. There may be moments when we feel like we are being broken down or reshaped, but we must trust that God is shaping us into something beautiful and purposeful. The potter does not abandon the clay during the process. He continues to mold it, working until it becomes a vessel that is useful and reflects His glory. Transformation is also a process that involves time. It is not an instant change, and it doesn't happen overnight. Often, we want transformation to happen quickly, but God's work in us takes time. We are like trees that grow slowly, rooted in His love and nurtured by His presence. Growth doesn't always happen in the way we expect it to, and it may not be visible at first. But just as a seed must be buried in the ground before it can sprout, the work of transformation often happens beneath the surface before it is revealed. This is why patience is so important in the process. God's timing is perfect, and He will bring about the change in our lives at the right time, when we are ready to step into the fullness of what He has for us. In addition to this, transformation is about alignment with God's purpose for our lives. God doesn't transform us for the sake of change alone. He transforms us so that we can fulfill the specific purpose He has for us. When God changes us, He is not just making us better versions of ourselves. He is equipping us for the work He has called us to do. Transformation enables us to step into our calling with confidence, knowing that we have been equipped by God's power and grace. When we allow God to transform us, we are not only becoming more like Him, we are also becoming the person He created us to be, equipped to carry out His purpose in the world. Finally, transformation is not a one-time event, but a continuous process. As long as we are living, God will continue to transform us. There is always more of His love, grace, and power to experience. The journey of transformation is ongoing, and it continues to unfold as we grow in our relationship with God. Every new season, every new challenge, and every new opportunity for growth is a chance for God to continue His work in us. Transformation is not just an event. It is a lifelong journey of becoming more like Christ and stepping more fully into the person God has called us to be. So, embrace the transformation that God is bringing into your life. Trust the process, surrender to His will, and be open to the ways He is shaping you. The transformation He is working in you will be powerful, and it will lead you to the life of purpose, fulfillment, and destiny that He has planned for you. The concept of divine timing is one of the most critical and often misunderstood aspects of our walk with God. We live in a world that is obsessed with instant gratification, where everything is expected to happen quickly, efficiently, and without delay. In our fast-paced culture, it can be difficult to accept that God operates on a timeline that doesn't always align with our own. But understanding and embracing God's divine timing is essential for living a life that is aligned with His purpose. His timing is always perfect, and it is in His timing that our lives unfold in the most powerful and meaningful way. One of the first things we need to understand about divine timing is that it is not subject to our own schedule. As human beings, we often operate with a sense of urgency, wanting things to happen when we want them. We make plans, set goals, and sometimes rush through life, thinking that we can force certain outcomes to happen. However, God's perspective on time is different. He is not bound by the constraints of time like we are. He exists outside of time, and His timing is always impeccable. He sees the end from the beginning, and because He knows what's best for us, He orchestrates events in our lives according to His perfect plan. The story of Abraham and Sarah is one of the clearest examples of divine timing in the Bible. God promised Abraham that he would be the father of many nations, but for years that promise seemed impossible. Abraham and Sarah were both well beyond the age of childbearing, and for decades they waited for the child God had promised them. But in their waiting, they became impatient, trying to rush God's plan by taking matters into their own hands. Sarah suggested that Abraham have a child with her maidservant, Hagar, and while this led to the birth of Ishmael, it was not the child of promise. It wasn't until Abraham was 100 years old and Sarah was 90 that they finally received the child of promise, Isaac. God's timing was not delayed by their impatience, but it was perfect in every way. The promise that Abraham would be the father of many nations was fulfilled, but it happened exactly when it needed to happen, when it was beyond human possibility, so that God's glory could be fully revealed. Divine timing often works in a way that leaves us with no doubt that God is the one who has brought the breakthrough or the blessing. When we try to rush things or manipulate circumstances to fit our own timeline, we may end up settling for something less than what God intended. But when we wait on God's timing, the result is always more than we could have imagined. His timing allows the pieces of our lives to fall into place in ways that we could never have orchestrated on our own. Waiting for God's timing brings us to the place where we experience His best, and when it happens, it is clear that it was worth the wait. Another important aspect of divine timing is that it's not just about the right moment for us, but the right moment for the people and circumstances around us. Often, we believe that God's delays are personal, but in reality, His timing is always about a much larger picture. When God is working in our lives, He is also working in the lives of others, and sometimes we must wait for others to be in the right place at the right time before His plan can unfold. For example, consider the story of Esther. She was placed in the position of queen for a specific purpose, to save her people from destruction. But her moment of action did not come immediately after she was made queen. It was only at the precise moment when her people were at risk of annihilation that she stepped forward and risked her life to approach the king. Esther's timing was divinely orchestrated by God. Had she acted too soon, she might not have had the influence she needed. Had she acted too late, it could have been too late for her people. But at the right moment, God used her for a great purpose, and everything fell into place. In our own lives, we can often feel like we're waiting for a door to open, a blessing to arrive, or a prayer to be answered. The waiting can be frustrating, and the silence can feel overwhelming. But God is never idle in the waiting. He is working behind the scenes, aligning people, resources, and opportunities to bring His plan to fruition. Often, we are being prepared for something greater during the wait. In the story of Joseph, we see a young man with a dream who was sold into slavery by his brothers, imprisoned and forgotten by those he helped. However, his time in prison was not wasted. God was using every moment of his hardship to prepare him for the moment when he would rise to power in Egypt and save many lives, including the lives of his own family. Joseph could not have understood the delays, the detours, and the disappointments he faced. But in hindsight, he realized that all of it was part of God's perfect timing. Waiting on God's timing is also about learning to trust Him more deeply. When we trust God's timing, we are acknowledging that He knows better than we do. We are saying, "I believe that you have a plan, and I trust that you will bring it to pass at the perfect moment." This requires us to release control and surrender our desires and expectations to Him. It's not always easy, but it is essential for our spiritual growth. We must remember that God's timing is not just for our benefit, it is for His glory. When we trust in His timing, we testify to His faithfulness and His wisdom, and we position ourselves to receive the blessings He has in store for us. In moments of waiting, we must remain faithful and obedient to what God has called us to do in the present. Waiting on God's timing doesn't mean being passive. It means being actively engaged in the process, trusting that He is at work even when we cannot see the outcome. We must continue to serve, continue to grow, and continue to follow His leading, knowing that His timing will bring everything together at the right moment. Divine timing is not just about when things happen, but how we respond during the waiting. The waiting is part of the process, and God uses it to refine our character, build our faith, and prepare us for what is to come. In the end, we will look back and see that everything came together exactly when it needed to, just as God intended. And when that moment comes, we will understand that God's timing was never too early or too late. It was always perfect. As we reflect on the journey that God is taking us on, it becomes clear that every step is intentional, every challenge purposeful, and every delay a divine orchestration. We are not here by accident, nor are we walking aimlessly through life. God is about to change your life forever, but the transformation that is coming will happen in His perfect timing. He is breaking down barriers, renewing your mind, transforming your heart, and guiding you through every obstacle with a purpose in mind. In His timing, you will see doors open that you never thought possible. You will experience a breakthrough that you never saw coming. And when you look back on the path you've walked, you will realize that each step, each delay, each challenge, and each victory was part of a beautiful plan that was being shaped and refined by a loving God. Understand this. God's plan for you is bigger than you can imagine, and the life He's about to unfold is more than worth the wait. Your story is far from over, and this season of preparation, waiting, and transformation is preparing you for the incredible things that lie ahead. You may face struggles, setbacks, and moments of doubt, but trust that God is with you every step of the way. He is working things together for your good, and when His timing is fulfilled, you will see His hand in every detail of your life. So, hold on to hope, continue to walk in faith, and trust that God's plan will unfold at the perfect moment. The change that is coming is not just a change in your circumstances. It is a change in your heart, your mindset, and your purpose. And when it happens, you will know that it was worth every moment of waiting, every moment of struggle, and every moment of faith. God is about to change your life forever, and you are on the verge of stepping into the greatest season of your life.